Now to another criminal case we've been following. The man accused of a racist attack earlier this month now faces additional charges from a second unrelated bias crime in April. Investigative reporter Evan Watson has the update.
Dylan Kesterson now faces 19 charges from these two incidents, including multiple bias crime charges. He was arraigned in Multnomah County Court this morning and pleaded not guilty. On top of that, prosecutors are seeking upward departure, meaning they want a sentence that's stronger than normal guidelines. Why is that? They point to the multiple victims from unrelated incidents and how the crimes have been motivated by race. Plus, they note how Kesterson failed to appear in court after being released recently. Police had to arrest him again. The updated indictment says Kesterson yelled anti-Asian racial slurs at 3 women in April. It says he assaulted 1 woman and endangered and harassed the others. Police did not initially arrest him for these incidents in April. 6 weeks later, Kesterson allegedly yelled anti-Asian slurs and attacked a visiting father and daughter who were riding a bike on the East Bank Esplanade. Evan Watson, KGW News.
A week before that family was attacked on the East Bank Esplanade, 2 elderly men were also randomly attacked in downtown Portland. Yesterday, we learned one of the victims has died. 82-year-old Donald Pierce suffered critical injuries. Police say Keffer White kicked and punched Pierce and another man in his 80s after making fun of them for being elderly. White later told police he'd been homeless for 13 years in Portland and was concerned about his own mental health. White was charged with attempted murder and assault, but we expect more charges now that one of the victims has died. However, we also noticed White was initially booked on bias crime charges. It does make sense, since police say he ridiculed them for being elderly before the attack. But those charges were then dropped. Why? Well, it turns out age actually is not listed in Oregon's bias crime statute. It reads, a person commits a bias crime in the first degree if the person intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly causes physical injury to another person because of the person's perception of the other person's race, color, religion, gender, identity, sexual orientation, disability, or national origin. I asked Lewis and Clark law professor Tung Yin about that.
It does not cover age. It could cover age if the legislature wanted to amend the statute. Of course, you can't do it retroactively, but if this case prompts the legislature to say, hey, elderly people are actually a vulnerable category and that we need to have extra deterrence against people attacking elderly people, the legislature could add that as a protected category, protected meaning that it would then qualify as bias. And we do see this in other contexts. Age discrimination, for example. Age is a protected category. Under federal law, once you hit 40, it is illegal to discriminate against somebody because of their age. So that's, again, something that could be done, but it just has not been done in this case.
9 states and the District of Columbia do have age included in their bias or hate crime laws. Washington, by the way, is not one of those states. Yin says that in the past, shocking crimes that get a lot of attention have led to laws being changed, like the case of Matthew Shepard, a Wyoming teenager who was tortured and murdered for being gay in 1998.
We typically think of the hot button hate crimes, which is what motivates these sorts of legislation. And so, Matthew Shepard, of course, that's one that prompted, I think, a lot of jurisdictions to include sexual orientation as a basis of bias or hate crime. And that's something where you can see that there are some people who have invidious, really nasty feelings of discrimination against people in these categories. So again, race, sexual orientation, gender identity, you can see is in the statute now. I guess with age, maybe there hasn't been as much of a push simply because there haven't been, the sort of galvanizing national headlines of, oh, this is an awful crime, we really need to do something about it. This case may be one. I mean, the allegations of kicking somebody to death, anybody, but especially an elderly person, are pretty horrifying.
It is worth mentioning, Oregon and Washington both added protections for sexual orientation in their hate crime laws before Shepard's murder in 1989 in Oregon and 93 in Washington. But the states more recently added protections for gender identity. That happened in 2008 in Oregon and not until 2019 in Washington. There are still a number of states that do not include either in their hate crime laws.